Everybody doing good today? Everybody having a good day? Okay, I got a question for everybody. I need some help out there. Who in the room has ever ran out of gas, like in your car? Ever ran out of gas? Okay, raise your hand. Ran out of gas. Raise your hand. Ever ran out of gas, stopped on the side of the road? Who has never run out of gas? Raise your hand if you have never run out of gas. That's just ridiculous. Really? Okay, wait. Who has run out of gas multiple times? Raise your hand. Okay. Who's never run out of gas again? I want to see you. I just don't like you. Maybe because I ran out of gas before. Okay, one more question. Who in the room has ever went and get gas when you were low on gas and you only got less than $1 of gas? Like you had change. Who's ever bought less than $1 of gas? Raise your hand. Really? Who's never bought less than $1 of gas? See, that's just ridiculous to me. I remember one time I was in high school and college, like you would have to scrape up all the change in your car. Like I'm looking underneath everything, and I remember getting 57 cents worth of gas. Now, back in high school, I started driving when I was 14 years old. I lived in a small town. I had to drive myself to school, drive myself to ball practice. So at 14 years of age, it is pretty stressful whenever you're 14 years old and you have 57 cents to be able to get home and get enough gas. And it's crazy when you live your life on E. I don't know if you've ever done that, where you just sit there and you get in your car and okay, one more question. Anybody cheap like me and you have enough money to fill the tank up, but you don't want to? You're like, $5 will be good or $10 will be good. Anybody? That is me all the time. I hate when I fill it up and I'm like, oh, I spent that much money. I don't realize that over time I would spend that much money, but and stop several times. But no, I've ran out of gas in my car several times. It's been embarrassing and it's been bad, but many people live their life that way. They don't just live with their car on E, they live with their life on empty. They live with their life where they are living on empty. And I tell you what, that is a horrible way to live. It is a horrible way to live when you have no energy physically. It's even worse way to live when you're living on E emotionally and you're living on E spiritually. Because when you're living on E physically, you can rest and you can eat and you can get rejuvenated. But when you're living on E emotionally and spiritually, many times we don't know what to do to get off of E and to be full. And today we're going to talk about that. What does it look when we live our life on empty? God doesn't want us to live that way. God wants us to live our life on full, and we're going to look at how to do that. If you look in the book of Job, we see a crazy story about Job who went through so many tremendously horrible things. And in the middle of going through those, here's one of the statements that he made out of the Message Bible. I love the way it says it in the Message. It said, if my misery could be weighed, if you could pile the whole bitter load on the scales, it would be heavier than all the sand of the sea. Job sounds pretty dramatic, doesn't he? Can you imagine Job on Facebook? It would be awesome. It would be heavier than all the sand of the sea. Is it any wonder that I'm screaming like a caged cat? Now, that's a lot of people's lives. They live their life screaming like a caged cat. Many people live their life in crazy cat syndrome. They do. Their whole life feels like everything is on me. The load of the world is on me. My life is crazy. I feel crazy. I feel like I have no control. I feel drained. I feel empty. And God doesn't want us to live like that. God has not called us to live life on empty. God has called us to live life on full. Jesus said this, I have come that you may have life and that you may have it what? To the fullest, to the full, exceeding abundant life. That's what he said he wants. Yet many people live life on empty. Here's what I would say. Do you know why many churches aren't growing, expanding, why Christianity isn't growing the way it should in the United States? Now let me say this. Across the world, Christianity is exploding. But in the United States, it is shrinking. Do you know why? Because many Christians in the United States live their life on empty. Their spiritual life is lived on empty. They have everything else in the world going for them, but spiritually they live their life on empty, and we are not called to do that. Imagine how big of a difference we could make in this world if we lived our life on full. And we're going to talk about how do we do that today. If you look in Matthew chapter 11, Jesus gives us great instructions on how to live our life full. How to live our life full and not live our life on empty. How to lighten our load. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, Jesus said this, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. He goes on and says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. We find the recipe, we find the way to live a life on the full in these verses. 3 verses that can change from living and dragging through life to living a victoriously full life. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. First thing we find in these scriptures, first thing that we are to do to live a life on the full is pretty simple, but it's to come to Jesus. Come to Jesus. You can write that in your notes if you're taking notes. Come to Jesus. Look at that, Matthew 11:28. Come to me. Let's just pause there a second. Come to me. What if we lived our life like that? Come to me. Then it goes on and says, all you who are weary and burdened, all of you that are tired, all of you that are stressed out, all of you that feel like life is on crazy cat syndrome. What does he say? He doesn't, listen, his solution is not a plan. His solution is not a 7-step program. His solution is not a pill that we put in our mouth to eat. His solution is a person. Now, there are plans we can do, and those are all great, but if those plans don't point us toward the person, then those plans will leave us empty. See, when he looks at how can you have a lightened load, first thing we have to do is come where? To him. Jesus says, come to me. Come to me. Come and hang out. Come and be close. Why? Because I will give you rest. That word rest, listen, that word rest isn't sleep. That word rest translated means refreshing. What he wants to do is he wants to come and he wants to refresh us on the inside and on the out. When we come and we're around him, we come and hang out with him, we can have times of refreshing where you may have had the hardest week ever, and you won't feel beaten down. You will feel refreshed if we make the choice to come to Jesus. Look at this in Isaiah. Isaiah says it beautifully. He says, he gives power to the weak and strength to the powerless. You know, that is, we're like, man, I'm weak, I'm powerless. Perfect place to be. Because what does he do? He gives power and he gives strength to us. He goes on and says, even youths will become weary, weak, and tired, and young men will fall in exhaustion. But those who trust in the Lord, what? Will find new strength. Who needs new strength? I think that's most of us. It says, but those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. They will soar high on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and they will not faint. We see a solution to living life on full in these scriptures right here. If you look at that verse, look in there where it says, but those who trust in the Lord will find strength. There's another version that says, but those who wait on the Lord. Those who wait on the Lord. Those who wait on him and hang out with him and are there with him and spend time with him. Those who are in his presence, what will happen? They will find strength from being in his presence. They will find peace and joy from being in his presence. If you are running on empty, the reason is because you haven't come to him to get recharged, to become full. You know, just yesterday I was looking at our yard. Our yard, the grass was overgrown. It was overgrown. It wasn't too bad, but it was growing. And I was like, I need to mow the yard. And I went out to start the riding mower, and it wouldn't start. And it wouldn't start because the battery was dead. And I was like, man. I sat down. I was like, what do I do now? The lawn needs to be mowed. What do I do? What do I do? Well, I had this epiphany. Well, go get the charger and go and hook it up to the battery. And we have this charger specifically designed for a smaller battery. And I was like, all you got to do is plug it in, go get the extension cord, run it, and then plug it in, and then charge it. And I thought, man, that's a lot of work. I got to go find the extension cord. I got to go find the charger. I got to plug all those in. Got to hook it up to the battery. Got to wait. And then when it's charged, I get to do it. And I sat there and I was like, man, that's a lot of work. Maybe the grass isn't that bad. Isn't that sad? Most of us live our life there, though, don't we? well, you know what? All I got to do is go and be in his presence. You know what? Maybe I'll just stay where I'm at and be here, and and I'll just hug the fact that life is leaving me empty instead of taking an action step. I will sit here and wallow in self-pity instead of taking steps toward Jesus and getting rejuvenated and getting full. See, it's our choice. And sooner or later, I got up and was like, I'll go get it. And I went and found it, and I plugged it in. Didn't have to charge it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I went out and charged it, went on the lawnmower, started right up, start mowing the yard. I'm mowing the front yard, and I don't realize that you're not supposed to blow your grass into the road. I'm from the country. In the country, nobody cares. I mean, where we live, you just blow wherever you want. Well, in the city, I see people sweeping up the lawn clippings. I'm like, why would you sweep those up? Those will eventually blow away. The neighbor drove by and was staring at me as I'm blowing my lawn all over the drive. I'm like, I'll just drive by the car. Here was my plan. I'll let it go out there. I'm going to get in my car and drive really fast. Right on top of the lawn. Then it'll disappear. Nobody will know I even did that. Who thinks that's a good plan? My neighbor didn't, because they looked at me nasty. And so when I'm sitting there, all it took from having tall grass to having a mowed yard was getting connected to the power source. See, instead of living a life of empty, come to Jesus and get connected to the power source. You're like, well, I know this. Well, then do it. You'd be amazed how many people know this and they never do it. They know it. I don't know why I'm just struggling through life. It's because you're doing it on your own. Get connected to the power source. It says this, Matthew chapter 6, verse 6 message. I love the way it says it in the message. It's just real straight. It says, here's what I want you to do. Jesus talking. Find a quiet and secluded place so you won't be tempted to role play before God. He's talking about prayer. And what happens many times when people pray? Many times when people pray in a public setting, they're trying to pray these awesome, eloquent prayers that will impress somebody. The beauty of your eloquent prayer impresses no one. It doesn't. But how many times when we're in a public setting will we just say beautiful prayer? I love prayer meetings, believe in prayer meetings. But here's the deal. There's got to be a time where your prayer time is not at church or not at a prayer meeting, but it is a personal, intimate time with you and him. And this is the advice he gives. He says, find a secluded place. He said, and don't role play before God acting like you're somebody you're not. Just be there as simply and as honestly as you can manage. The focus will shift from you to God, and you will begin to sense his grace. There are times where sometimes, I remember we were on staff at a church, and I hated the church-wide prayer meetings. I did, because they were a contest. It really was like a contest to see who could get up and pray the biggest, most extravagant, boldest, powerful prayer that really was just a bunch of wind coming out of somebody's mouth. Instead of just honest, heartfelt prayers that brought passion and changed their lives. And I remember I was never very eloquent or good at praying, and so I was always intimidated to get up. I remember we were young youth pastors, and I was like, oh man, my prayer's going to suck compared to his prayer. I mean, I literally would sit on the front row thinking, man, it's going to suck compared to... I was like, I don't care if it sucks. It's going to suck from my heart. And no one else in this room may be impressed with it, but it'll be straight to him. And see, we need to find these times to where if we're running on empty, or if we're all the way full, or we're 3/4, why live life? Why live life the way I get gas in our car, $5 at a time? Why don't we just fill it up? And we fill it up by coming to him and just being real. See, the one thing that I love about our church is that we are pretty transparent. And there are times where I go before God and pray, and I'm like, Lord, I have no clue what to do. I don't know what you want. I have no clue. But I want to hear what you want. And my prayers may be a little weird sometimes because my prayers are more of a conversation. They are a prayer, you would see. And the other day I went into my closet. We have our new house, and I have my own closet. Woo, woo. And why would I be excited about that? I'm a dude. But I'm excited because I had a place to go by myself. I mean, we have a house full of crazy. It's loud all the time. Their kids are loud. They want something to eat. They want to fart on you. It's everything all the time. They literally do. Is that not true? The younger ones do. And so I'm just like, I'm going. I came home and nobody knew I was home yet. And so I just went and I shut my closet door. That is fair. It is very fair. And I shut my closet door. She didn't know I was home. Nobody knew I was home. And I sat in this dark closet praying very quietly so no one would hear me. And I'm sitting in this dark closet praying quietly. And I was like, Lord, I don't know what to do. I feel tired. This sermon's for me, by the way. Is that okay? Like, Lord, I'm tired. I'm worn out. I just done counseling with somebody. I'm like, I feel like the weight of the whole world's on my shoulders. I can't help these people all the time, Lord. I don't have the strength. And in that quietness, the Lord said, I never told you to have the strength. I've got the strength. Well, I don't know what to do with them. Tom, I got this. Well, Lord, what are you going to do? I got it. But what are you going to do? Tom, I got it. Well, tell me how. I'm not telling you. Okay, well, I love you, Lord. Will you tell me now? And he's like, no. It's just this conversation. Anybody get in? Where it's just really transparent. It's really real. And in those moments, God will show me things like, God will show me things about, you need to treat your wife better. Like, we weren't even talking about her. Why did you bring that up? But you know what happens in those moments of just being intimate? And what happens is life comes in you. Because you just come to him. And there are times when I've just been sitting there like, Lord, I don't know what to do. And he just goes, I love you. Tom, I love you so much. And I know what to do. And it's like in those moments he puts his arms around you and he just loves on you. But you don't get that filling up unless you have those moments. And you don't get those moments unless you make those moments. Everybody get this? I'm too busy. Well, then run on empty. Or take time to get those moments of refreshing. And that's what we have to have. Let's go ahead and go to the next thought. What do we see? What other lesson we learn? We learn to come to Jesus. Here's the next one. Give up control. Now, I don't like this one because I'm a control freak. Anybody else in the room, when you go to Walmart, quit saying I'm a control freak? I am not a control freak. The Lord is delivering me from my control problems. Thank you, honey. Anybody else go to Walmart and you have to push the cart? Anybody else, you have to drive the car when you're in the car? I can't ride in the car with her. I can't. She's a good driver. But I can't ride. I cannot. It just drives me. I'm sitting there going, oh, and I get shaky because I love to be in control. I love to be in control. But the deal is, with God, we can't be in control. Look at this. He says, take my yoke upon you. Now, what is this whole yoke thing? What is this yoke thing? Is it like an egg? No, what is it? You guys got the picture? Put the picture up there. Take my yoke upon you. This is a yoke. Now, what a yoke was used for was used for oxes or oxen. And what they would do is a yoke was designed to have two oxes or oxen side by side that would pull the load. See, he didn't say, take my harness upon you. Because what a harness was it was just designed for one. But when God talks about a yoke, it is something designed for two to pull side by side simultaneously. And he goes, take my yoke upon you. Take this where I have a place and you have a place and we pull this together. Everybody grab hold of that. I have a place and you have a place and we pull this together. And you see, what does he say? He says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Literally translated, it does not translate it easy and light. What it literally translates is my yoke is perfectly designed for you. If you found a great yoke, what would happen is they would go and they would have someone design it or build it perfectly to fit the oxen that they would put it on. Because if you had one that was too big, it wouldn't fit. If you had one that was too small, so they would try to fit it where it would fit perfectly for each one. And that's what God has done for us. My yoke, my thing upon your life is easy and light. And that's what he wants us to know. But in order for that to happen, we have to give up control. What does that look like? Your yoke is easy. Here's what it looks like. You are not in charge of your finances. He should be. Well, you know what? I just don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can. What if I don't have enough? No, you give it to him. Instead of saying, Lord, here is my budget, you say, God, what should my budget look like? Instead of saying, Lord, here's my schedule for this week, why don't we go and say, God, what do you want my schedule to look like? See, that is what it means to be yoked together. And you don't pull it by yourself. You pull it side by side, which is a beautiful example of what he wants our lives to be. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. A yoke is a symbol of partnership. It's a symbol of partnership. Psalm 55, verse 22, it says, give your burdens to the Lord, and he will take care of you. He will not permit the ungodly, the godly to slip and to fall. See, he's walking side by side with you, yoked together with you. And when you're yoked together with him, he will not allow you to fall. He will hold you up. Here's what I would say. If you're stressed out, if you have anxiety, if you're going through really tough times and you feel like you're on empty, here's what I'd say. You are not yoked to God. Everybody look up here. You can go to heaven. You can ask Jesus in your heart. But you can live a lot of your life not yoked up with him, going the direction he wants you to go. And why do people get exhausted? Because they aren't yoked together with him, side by side, pulling together with him. They're like, Jesus, I give you my heart, but I'm not walking with you every day. See, a yoke is a sign of partnership where he is going to help you carry the load. As a matter of fact, here's the deal. You're like, what does that even look like? See, many times, here's what we want God to do. We want God to carry the load, don't we? Lord, here's my problems, carry the load. He doesn't say he's going to carry the load. What does he say he's going to do? He said he's going to be yoked together with you, and together you're going to carry the load. Well, why do I have so many things going on me? They're just all weighing me down. Get yoked to him, and he will help you carry the load. Now, isn't it amazing that yoke talk about oxen? I had a gentleman here earlier in the first service. He was telling me all about oxen. I didn't know anything about oxen. This guy knew everything about oxen. He sat there and he goes, you know, if you have a horse and they're on a harness, he said, if the mud gets so deep, the horse will just quit pulling. He goes, oxen will never quit pulling. He said, oxen, even if the mud gets deep where it's almost to their neck, what they'll do is they'll stick their head up where they can still breathe, and they will still inch their way out of that because they are not alone. They are pulling with a partner. See, some of you feel like, well, it's almost over my head. It's not over your head. And if you're yoked together with him, you're going to make it through the crud of life victoriously every single time. You just have to look who you're yoked to because it's a partnership. Here's the deal. The truth is, all of us are yoked to somebody or to something. You just have to make a choice. Will you be yoked to the right thing? Anybody here ever heard of Bob Dylan? Who's ever heard of Bob Dylan? Bob Dylan, who knows Bob Dylan? If you don't know Bob Dylan, it's not because you're old. It's because you're not cool enough. Because you can be young and still know who Bob Dylan is, right? Well, Bob Dylan wrote an incredible song talking about this principle. Kind of like that. Anybody know what this song is? Who knows what the song is? It's called Serve Somebody. Because the truth is, we're yoked to somebody whether we know it or not. See, some of you, you're yoked to a ball club, and that determines your joy. Well, I'm an OU fan. Well, they suck this year, so you have no joy. Be back next year, in Jesus' name. Or you're yoked to a person who's not following the Lord. The Bible talks about not being unequally yoked with an unbeliever. Some of you, you're looking to yoke up with somebody. This is straight up true. You are. And I'm single. I want to yoke up with somebody. I want to have somebody with me the rest of my life. If you're not yoked to Christ, there's a good chance you're going to yoke up to the wrong person. See, we're all yoked to something. Some of you yoked to your job, and it doesn't fill you up. Some of you, you're yoked to all these things. Yoked even to church. You're yoked to Jesus. Can we sing that song? Because everybody's going to serve somebody. Rock it.
Oh, you're going to have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're going to have to serve somebody.
We need a girl singer. Serve somebody.
It may be the devil, Lord. It may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody.
Give Colin a big hand. Thank you, Colin. You're going to serve. See, we make a choice. Who are we yoked together with in partnership? I don't know about you. I want to be yoked with Jesus. And the other things that I'm yoked to, I'm not supposed to. I want to be unyoked. Unyoked to them. So we see that a yoke is a symbol of a partnership. It's a symbol of, here's another thing. A yoke is a symbol of control. A yoke is a symbol of control. Do you know that what they used to do if they had one ox that was like rowdy and wouldn't do the right thing, what they would do is they would find a stronger ox that knew what to do to go with it. And then they would yoke those two oxen together. They would yoke them together. I need a volunteer. Come on up here. Here, Chris, come on up here. You just got voluntold. Come on up here. Here's what they would do. They would take turn this way. They would take an ox that was crazy. That could be me. And then they would take an ox that knew the direction it was supposed to go. And they would take him. They would take the ox that knew where it was supposed to go. They would make sure it was stronger than the ox that was crazy. And they would yoke them together. We got to hold arms, okay? Don't think this is anything special. Okay, here we go. Chris was one of my youth group kids years ago. And they would start going. Here's what they would do. They would start going on the path, and they would start plowing, and they would start plowing. And then the crazy ox would say, woo, what's going on over there? And it would try to pull its way this way, but the strong ox would pull it back in line. And then it would go again. It's like, hey, there's something over here. And the strong ox would force itself and make it go the way it was supposed to go. Everybody grab hold of that. That's the way it is to be yoked with Christ. Because when you're yoked with him, you're yoked with, thank you, Chris, good job. When you're yoked with him, you are yoked with someone who is stronger and wiser than you are. And you may be going along saying, whoa, that looks like a good way to go. And you start just like, that's a dumb way to go. Come back this way. And you have a choice at that moment, and many people choose to break the yoke. I'm not a part of this yoke anymore because I want to go over there. And we go over there and we get in trouble. But if we stay yoked to him, what is it? It's a control. I mean, when you are yoked to Christ, he will never take you down a path that will not bless you. Now, there may be times it doesn't feel like it's a blessing, but the end will be a blessing. I remember when he called us to start the church. He called us to start this church, and I was like, don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. I'm good with what I'm doing. I'm cool with what I'm doing. Don't want to do that. And he goes, no, I want you to do that. Okay, well, we'll do it then. And we're going down the path. And I was like, we don't have any money. We have no money. We have 4 kids. We have no money. We have 4 kids. You want to start a church? You've got to provide for us. And so I started searching. For groups to hook up with. We found a group to hook up with. They said, we'll give you $120,000 for the first 3 years of you being a church. I'm like, yeah, I want that because that's going to help us. And we decided we were going to yoke up with them. And the Lord said, don't do that. I'm like, that's $120,000. That will help us get the church started. And he said, don't do that. I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm yoked up to crazy. I feel like I'm yoked up to I don't know, because everything that looks logical to me, you're telling me not to do. But the fact is, here's the deal. The fact is, I was yoked to someone who could see the big picture when I could only see this. I could see a tiny little picture. And then when I was yoked to, could see the whole picture. See, when we choose to yoke up with God and get connected to him, it changes us forever. And the yoke is a symbol of control. Here's the last one. If we want to not run on empty, who wants to not run on empty? We come to Jesus, we give up control, and the last one is we learn to trust. We learn to trust. Matthew chapter 11, verse 29, he says, take my yoke upon you. Doesn't say I'm going to throw my yoke upon you. Doesn't say I'll force my yoke upon you. Everybody grab hold of that. He doesn't force his yoke on you. He gives you the choice to take the yoke. And he says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Okay, now that's brilliant there. If we can just make a decision, God, I will be yoked to you, and you're going to teach me things that I never knew I could know. Learn from me, for what? For I am gentle and I am humble in heart. And what will happen? And you will find rest for your souls. See, sometimes we're like getting yoked together. That sounds like more work. No, it isn't. It's him guiding us the right way, directing us, and taking a load off of us and giving us rest for our souls. Then it goes on and says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If you want to live a life not on empty, but a life on full, Get yoked up with him. Come to him. Surrender. Every day. Everybody look up here. Being yoked to him is an everyday process. Well, I got yoked a long time ago. No. It's an everyday renewal of I'm going to walk with you and follow you and hear your voice. That's what he wants for our life. Let's pray.